At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. Okay, how many of you have to take decongestants, over-the-counter stuff for the drips and drabs and nasal drainage and all that fun stuff? I do. I got to take lots of that stuff. I always have allergies or a head cold. I'm always fighting this stuff. Anyway, people have been complaining for years that the cold and flu and drainage and decongestants don't work. Turns out, cuz they don't. Our friend Michael Siegel, that's Dr. Michael Siegel to use, writing in Ordinary Times. He's taken a piece from the New York Times to jump off here. We'll link to it in the Substack notes. But from the New York Times, quote, an advisory panel to the Food and Drug Administration agreed unanimously on Tuesday that a common decongestant ingredient used in many over-the-counter cold medicines is ineffective. Ineffective, that's a big fancy word for it. Don't work, for those of you from Logan. Back to the New York Times. The panel vote tees up a likely decision by the agency on whether to essentially ban the ingredient phenylephrine, which I'm probably saying wrong, but it doesn't work, so we're not going to worry about pronouncing it correctly, which would result in pulling hundreds of products containing it from the store shelves. If the FDA ordered the removal, a trade group warned that numerous popular products, including Tylenol, Mucinex, and Benadryl, cold and flu remedies, might become unavailable as companies race to reformulate them. Agency officials generally follow the recommendation of the advisory panels, though not always, and it could take some months before a final decision is made. And the findings could be contested, prolonging any move towards product substitutions or removing certain stocks at stores. In the meantime, experts advise consumers not to panic or toss out all the drugs in their medicine cabinets, even though the agency advisors have decided the ingredient, phenylephrine, doesn't work to relieve nasal, not naval. If you got naval congestion, you just need a washcloth. We're talking nasal congestion here, folks. Nasal congestion, when taken orally, that's by mouth for those of you from Madison, it is not dangerous, and the products do contain other ingredients that will work to ease cold symptoms. That's the end of the New York Times quote. Let's see what Dr. Michael Siegel, our good friend, we're going to get him on to talk about this soon. Michael Siegel says, my response to this cannot be printed in these family-friendly pages of Ordinary Times. Studies have shown that phenylephrine, or however we're saying it, while having other medical uses, is completely useless as a decongestant since at least 2007. Consumers have been complaining for 16 years the stuff doesn't work. The only reason it was foisted upon us in the first place was because of restrictions on pseudoephedrine. Pseudoephedrine is effective as a decongestant, but also because it's a precursor to the manufacturing of methamphetamine. Therefore, state and federal governments, in their long-standing practice of responding to criminal activity by punishing innocent people, responded in the early 2000s meth epidemic by imposing various restrictions on pseudoephedrine sales. Okay, pause. When you go to the counter now, you can't just get the real good Mucinex D and that sort of stuff and the Benadryl. You got to go ask the pharmacist for it. That's what we're talking about here. By the way, it also jumped the price way up. Back to Michael Siegel here. While they were immediately dropped in meth use immediately after the passage of the CMEA in 2005, that's the legislation, it has since rebounded because drug addicts are smart. They can adjust a lot faster than the government can. That's me saying that, not Michael. Michael says this: there is little evidence that restricting pseudoephedrine availability cut meth use at all. At most, it moved the manufacturer to Mexico. In the meantime, 16 years later, here we are, a nation of 330 million people sniffling, snarking, and snorting snot because a drug that has never demonstrated efficiency beyond placebo was foisted upon us as a replacement for a drug that actually, worked. Panel's advice is, as the name on the label suggests, advisory. The FDA is free to ignore it and will no doubt be under pressure from drug manufacturers desperate to have anything in the medicine they can remotely call a decongestant, even as its decongesting powers are so slight, greatly than inhaling mouse farts. Michael Siegel bringing the heat on pseudoephedrine, phenylphedrine, or whatever it is that doesn't work. Folks, those of us that have to snot and snort our way through life because we have allergies, hay fevers, and other things, just give us some drugs that work at a decent price. Is that too much to ask? When it comes to our current iteneration of the FDA and state and local governments, apparently it is. We'll link to this piece in Ordinary Times. It'll be on the Substack notes, heardtell.substack.com. We'll get Michael Siegel on to talk about it soon. More Heard Tell right after this.
That's the sound of your current hype level at the gas pump. But brace yourself for something fuel nominal, because Unleaded 88 is about to take the hype to a whole new level. Unleaded 88 is cheaper, cleaner, and greener than regular unleaded. Plus, it's homegrown, making Unleaded 88 the clear choice at the pump and totally worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88, brought to you by Iowa Corn.
Get an 11% rebate at Menards. Rust-Oleum Stops Rust Custom 5-in-1 Spray Paint lets you choose from 5 spray patterns with a twist of the dial. It protects indoor and outdoor metal and wood projects for long-lasting results and is available in more than 40 colors. Get started on your painting project at Menards, #1 in customer satisfaction among home improvement retailers according to J.D. Power. For more information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Save big money at Menards.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Mitt Romney has announced he's not going to seek another term in the United States Senate. This, of course, got a lot of reaction online because online isn't reality. Listen, don't kid yourself. If Mitt Romney ran in Utah again, despite what you've been told, he would win. That's not why he's doing this. In his speech, he said, I'd be in my mid-80s, I'm paraphrasing here, by the time of my next term, and that's too old, and it's time for a new generation. This is also somebody who's been doing politics and public service for over 25 years, as he's referenced. He's got an enormous wealth, a huge family. He's got plenty of other things he could be doing, and he stepped aside. This needs to be praised. Although the rate the United States government is going, having good, decent men like Mitt Romney, who I don't agree with on everything, but I've never once doubted that he isn't a decent human being in the government, knowing that he's competent and knows what he's doing for the most part, it's still a loss. We got to be consistent here. We complain about the geriocracy and the octogenarians that run Congress. Here's Mitt Romney saying, I'm not going to be one. He's going to pack it up, take it to the House. That's something worth praising. It's also something remembering that people like Mitt Romney, who know what they're doing, who's just decent people who you may disagree with, but who are very, very competent. Remember, he's been very successful in business. He saved the Olympics out in Utah years ago. People forget about that a little bit. So the real hardcore folks on the right have never fully embraced him. We know about the missing voters that voted for Bush but would not come out for Romney against President Obama when he ran for president. Look, nobody on planet Earth was going to beat Barack Obama in that election. But we could have done a whole lot worse as leaders go than what we got out of Mitt Romney. I didn't agree with all his policies. I didn't agree with all his politics. I don't agree with all his beliefs. But I'm glad he ran, and I think we should praise him. The fact that he's not going too further, even though he could, and has decided to step aside. More of that. And thank you for your service, Senator Mitt Romney. We'll see you soon. More Hertel after this. Welcome back to Hertel. Okay, big old mess in Congress. He's our man on the spot on Capitol Hill. He knows what's going on. He is the senior DC guy that handles such things for The Independent. He's also an aspiring musician, but we'll talk about that some other time. Eric Garcia, how are you, my friend?
What's going on?
Hey, brother, appreciate your time. All right, Congress is going to be all over the news for the next couple of weeks, especially. They're back in session. The Senate came back Monday. The House came back Tuesday, and it went poorly right off the jump. Where do we even start with this? Because they've done some preliminary things. There's going to be a lot of caucus meetings today and tomorrow and some procedural things. Before we jump into headlines, McCarthy, impeachment, the budget battle, the Senate, Mitt Romney stepping down. Give me an overall lay of the land as people came back. Was there a sense that this is going to be a real slog and a real bad time as they came back? You're standing in the hallways. What was the demeanor? Do they know that this is going to be a rough couple of weeks?
So I think it's important to just always differentiate between the House and the Senate. The Senate is, for better or for worse, they almost are acting like this doesn't even happen. They're just, including Senate Republicans. They're just like, we're working together on appropriations. They had this whole meeting on AI yesterday. On Wednesday. There's been this, there's really just this feeling of we need to keep the government open and we're doing our job. And there's almost kind of a sense of annoyance. Meanwhile, the House, by nature, the House is a little squirrelier, as you know. But there was always, I think there was this expectation that was ultimately founded that McCarthy was going to that Speaker McCarthy was going to be in a bind because he promised last year, even before he became speaker, that there would not be an omnibus spending bill. There would be 12 individual spending bills. And then on top of that, there was talk that they were going to have to do a CR, a continuing resolution, to keep the government open so they could continue negotiations. So there was always this feeling like McCarthy was always going to be in a tough spot. Now, there is also this feeling that that in order to, I guess you could say, pacify what you and I call the raucous caucus, he was going to need to do impeachment. Now, but as many people know, and many people said, is that he couldn't subject his most vulnerable members to the impeachment inquiry. So basically, he started the inquiry without even a vote. So basically, from the get-go, there was this feeling that this was going to be basically what my dad likes to call a dog's breakfast.
Sounds like it. You mentioned McCarthy. We're going to get into him in a minute because he's going to get a lot of the headlines. Mitch McConnell's been in the headlines for a lot of, frankly, scary reasons with the health stuff. Schumer's going to get some pop today because he's meeting with Elon Musk. That's a sideshow to itself. The leader on Capitol Hill that's not getting discussed is Hakeem Jeffries. He's doing record-setting fundraising. I don't think that's by accident. I think he knows, look, I got to hold my caucus together. They've got a slim majority. Let's just not put out the burning man as he runs by and just keep kind of a low profile play. Is that the plan? Because if it is, it's kind of working. Him and McCarthy actually kind of get along. That's probably going to come to a screeching halt somewhere right around Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Is that an accurate read on what Jeffries is doing? He's just kind of biding his time and waiting here?
He had a small briefing, in a few hours he's going to have his main briefing. But after McCarthy announced the impeachment inquiry, he did, him, Catherine Clark, and Pete Aguilar, the three of them basically get along. It's very different from Pelosi and Hoyer. They basically had this trifecta press conference, sparsely attended. He did his normal, song and dance, but I think that he very much is biding his time. He's trying to hold it together. I think the other thing that you need to take into account is that essentially he and a lot of other, he basically brushed off a hypothetical about a motion to vacate the chair. Essentially what he would need to do if because Matt Gaetz gave a speech on Tuesday saying that he wants to have daily motions to vacate the chair. Essentially at this point, Jeffries needs to keep the caucus together to prevent any defections from anybody joining a motion to vacate and get them all to vote present so that McCarthy isn't deposed. But at this point, he's really still, I guess you could say, a speaker in training. It wouldn't surprise me that one reason why Pelosi decided to run for Congress again is to be almost an informal kitchen cabinet advisor to him in the in the next Congress were he to become speaker. But he very much is, I think, not lying low because he likes the attention and spotlight, not like Chuck Schumer, but he is very much, I think, being very methodical about the words that he's choosing.
Yeah, Eric Garcia joining us. Let's just get into the impeachment thing real quick because there's two things that need to be touched on here, I think, other than the fact that they did it. The timing of it and how they did it. Let's start with how they did it. He threw it to the committees for an impeachment inquiry, which is kind of the slow roll method of it. This is the same way Nancy Pelosi did the first one. It avoids the vote. You already told. That tells you one thing, because the one hard truth on Capitol Hill that nobody can lie their way out of is if you got the votes, you vote. If you don't, you do procedures. Yes. So they don't have the votes. That's what that tells you, number one. Plus, politically, it would be suicide. Number two is the timing of this. He came back to the recess knowing he was going to do this to launch it. And the same time this goes down, the defense bill gets pulled back because they don't have the votes for that. The funding stuff is going. Is there any way to read this other than, because McCarthy's not dumb. He doesn't really want to do the impeachment thing. He wants to talk about it without doing it, so he gets the credit without the blame. Yes. Is there any other way to read this than he's got to placate the caucus and he's just run out of horses to trade and now he's got to give it to them?
There is no other way to read it. You have to remember that it wasn't just the one thing if you're Lauren Boeberts and your Matt Gaetz were talking about it, but even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was his his most trusted right-wing deputy, was even talking about it. And she said, look, and I talked about this, that I talked with Marjorie Taylor Greene 2 months ago, and she said, look, I voted to make McCarthy speaker. I voted for the debt limit increase. This is my price. He had no choice. And she said during a town hall that she was not going to vote for a government spending bill unless there was a vote to impeach Joe Biden and unless there was a vote to defund Jack Smith and no funding for Ukraine. So as you said, they pulled the defense bill yesterday. And the reason why is because McCarthy didn't want to embarrass himself with and leadership didn't want to embarrass themselves with a failed defense bill. It's one thing to have a failed speaker vote. It's another thing to have a failed defense bill. So at this point, it basically is. You're right. There are no more horses to trade, and he also knows that inevitably, enough Republicans are going. More than 5 Republicans are going to vote against the continuing resolution. So he had to throw them basically a bone because he knows that voting for a continuing resolution is going to infuriate countless members of his conference.
Yeah, Eric Garcia joining us. Herein lies the problem, though. I want to back up to something you said.
Yes.
You said it with a straight face, and it was normal for you, and you didn't even stop. Kevin McCarthy's most trusted right-wing aide, Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's 221 other people in Congress besides Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is a problem of his own making. Yes. He let her back in. He put her in charge. He not only gave her committee assignments back, which he probably had to do to appease the cock. He's given her power. He's brought her in. Like this, why would you do this? Is bringing the unpinned grenade into the car and driving fast with it. I don't understand why he did it. I know he felt like he had to placate these people, but surely there was somebody other than her to do it, because this is the snake that's going to eat you at some point here.
Yeah, no, it's a borrow from Trump's favorite song. You knew darn well I was a snake before you took me in. I think McCarthy. It's important to remember McCarthy was House Majority Whip when Boehner did battle with the Freedom Caucus, and I should also say that he's also tried to placate Jim Jordan and Thomas Massie as well, who are the guys who booted John Boehner and who basically chased Paul Ryan out of town. But he made a but I also think that this is also part of him trying to appease Donald Trump. Obviously, Marjorie Taylor Greene is very close to Donald Trump. This is his way of keeping in good graces with Trump. But this was very much a strategic choice that he knew if he got some folks like Jim Jordan and Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene on his side, that it would give him cover. And in exchange, as you said, he gave them legitimate power. A lot of people talked about how the Freedom Caucus booted Marjorie Taylor Greene right before the recess. She really doesn't need the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus just groans and complains, but they've never actually accomplished anything. Budget deficits soared under Obama and Trump, and Obamacare remains a law of the land. But he made this conscientious choice because he didn't want her against him. He didn't want her to have a motion to vacate, to join in a motion to vacate the chair. And he basically divided and conquered Marjorie Taylor Greene versus Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert to basically keep his gavel.
Yeah, Eric Garcia joining us. Let's talk about that Freedom Caucus real quick. Chip Roy's been making some noise lately. Yeah. The Freedom Caucus has decided to war with Ken Buck, of all people.
Yes.
They have not, like you said, they don't really accomplish anything. They complain a lot, but they see this as their big moment. They get to actually rail against spending with a Democratic president and a speaker that they don't particularly like. Is this going to be the one time they actually accomplish anything, or at least throw a wrench in the works? Because this plan of trying to get 12 bills through, here you got Chip Roy's already talking about lumping Homeland Security and the defense bill and all that together, which is going to be a non-starter for everybody. Is this going to be the time where they really do get themselves, the head on the pike?
This is I was talking about this with my editor just the other day. This is as much a test for the Freedom Caucus as it is for Kevin McCarthy. The Freedom Caucus got hard concessions from McCarthy in writing. Matt Gaetz, so I should note that Matt Gaetz had a press call with reporters after his little stunt speech on the floor on Tuesday, where he said he was going to file motions to vacate the chair. And he said Chip Roy has the written agreement, holds his version of the written agreement. So they have to essentially try to hold McCarthy to this, or they'll look basically completely impotent if they don't get at least something attached, or they reduce funding for Ukraine, or they tie Ukraine to Homeland Security spending. They have to get something, and if they don't, they have no other choice but to join a motion to vacate the chair with Matt Gaetz. Gaetz is not part of the Freedom Caucus. A lot of people think he is, but he's not a member of the Freedom Caucus, much like Thomas Massie. But they have no choice, because they said they have things in writing. They said they have a written agreement. So if they do not act on it, and they do not actually try to give McCarthy the boot, they look like they basically look impotent as well. And I should say this is the other thing, because you mentioned Ken Buck. So Buck, of course, he said that there was basically not a there with impeachment. In many ways, the Freedom Caucus is picking a fight with Ken Buck. They picked a fight with Marjorie Taylor Greene before the recess. This is them trying to show that they're tough without actually doing the hard work of trying to boot Kevin McCarthy, or vote, or actually try to govern and try to get some spending cuts, included in the 12 appropriations bills.
Yeah, Eric Garcia joining us. Here's the thing. Matt Gaetz doing a speech. Nobody cares because nobody takes him seriously. If everybody remembers, when they finally got the speaker logjam done, we have the infamous clip of somebody whispering it in his ear. His face drops, and all of a sudden he decided he didn't want to fight that battle anymore.
Yeah.
Would like to know what was in that conversation. But anyway, but if you read between the lines on the press quotes, like you said, there was a couple different gaggles the last couple of days. People that do matter are using a magic word here. I've got some quotes here. These are from Punchbowl News. Excellent resource, by the way. Everybody should read Punchbowl. Ralph Norman from South Carolina. We should have top numbers ready, but we don't right now. It didn't happen. Quote, that's on leadership. Dan Bishop out of North Carolina, one of those rising guys that does things now. The question is just whether leadership wants to go ahead and get down a bit. Okay, leadership is code for Kevin McCarthy.
Yes.
They're already planting the seeds. Whatever happens now is all on Kevin McCarthy. I don't see a good way for McCarthy out of this because as we're recording this, I believe we got 15 days until the shutdown number, depending on which number you want to use. If they put a bill down.
Religion is at the intersection of our 21st century life, even if we don't express a faith. At a time when it seems that religion isn't as prevalent as it once was, it still leaves its mark everywhere. As a pastor, I know that religion isn't something I just do on a Sunday, but it's found in every nook and cranny of my life. Sexuality, politics, social media, the economy, war, nationalism, all have some kind of religious angle to them. And as a communicator, I want to find the stories that can help people understand this part of our society that is so important to so many. Hi, I'm Dennis Sanders, and I'm the host of Church and Main. Church and Main is a podcast about the journey of faith and where it intersects with modern life. I look at faith with a journalist's eye, asking the who, where, what, why, and how religion affects some of the major issues of the day. Join me as we journey together. You can listen to Church and Main podcast at the website churchandmain.org or on your favorite podcast app. I look forward to seeing you.
Folks, you've heard of Ethan Brown on the Heard Tell show a couple of different times, but if you're interested in learning about how to discuss things like climate change without all the politics and doom and gloom, head over to his podcast, The Sweaty Penguin. Sweaty Penguin is a late-night comedy-style climate podcast working to add nuance, critical thinking, humor, and hope to the climate conversation. They got over 100 episodes already, breaking down weekly news stories and specific topics, from the vanilla to the ADHD to the international accountability to orangutans. Yes, I know, that's a comedy thing, so just go with it. But each time, exploring different ways we can make progress on these issues while still helping the economy, health, security, and everything else we care about. Feel overwhelmed, exhausted, or excluded by today's climate change discourse? This is the podcast for you. Find The Sweaty Penguin wherever you get your podcasts or at www.thesweatypenguin.com. Today they wouldn't get it done.
No.
So is there any way that they avoid a shutdown? Is there any way McCarthy's going to survive this thing?
So the answer is, I would say 90%. There's no chance that we avoid a shutdown. There is going to be a shutdown. It's just basically about how long. And, I'm sure that the White House is already getting ready, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is already getting ready to lay the blame at the feet of Kevin McCarthy. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, as he said, we're not going to vote on a ransom note. The question, a lot of people said during the debt limit debate that McCarthy was going to be toast. I never really believed that because the debt limit was always going to be an agreement. It cut some spending, but it was always going to come down to appropriations. Now there is really a question of whether the slow walk impeachment inquiry is enough to keep enough members of the Freedom Caucus happy while he's doing this continuing resolution. And if not, then it could very well spell the end of him. But again, and I keep on saying this, what matters is, the only thing that matters is you and I have said this countless times, Matt Gaetz, having his little peacocking moments doesn't really matter. What matters is that the folks who flipped their votes to give McCarthy the gavel. People like Michael Cloud, people like Byron Donalds, people like Scott Perry, people like Dan Bishop decide to make a hell of a lot of noise, and they decide, okay, you know what, we're going to join this motion to vacate. That's what matters, because the Democrats aren't going to help Matt Gaetz depose Kevin McCarthy just on principle, because they don't want to know. They know that whoever he replaces is going to be worse, in their mind, going to be worse. So this is going to be really a test of basically playing chicken between McCarthy and the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah, Eric Garcia joins us. One other little sub-note that's not getting a lot of headlines right now, but you talked about the leadership, people who help and hurt McCarthy. Steve Scalise isn't really on the board right now. He's still technically there, but he's dealing with cancer. We hope he recovers, by the way. But he's not really there daily right now. He was there daily when they fixed all the stuff last year and back during the spring and the summer when things looked really dicey. He's kind of the steady old hand on a lot of this. A lot of people watch for him to flip on McCarthy, and he never actually did. That kind of held everything together. How much does him not really being in play right now affect it? Because that's one of those big ticket pieces that's not all the way there right now for understandable reasons. Is that something to keep an eye on right now? That's something absolutely to keep an eye on. I mean, as people, as CNN reported, Republican Conference Chairwoman Elise Stefanik had a call with President Trump before the discussion about the impeachment inquiry. There is still so very much so. For all of the, and speakers and their House Majority Leaders always have a rough relationship. Pelosi and Hoyer hated each other. John Boehner and Eric Cantor despised each other. But at the end of the day, you have to know how to land the plane. But with Scalise out of the game, this basically makes it a 3-person leadership team with McCarthy, Stefanik, and Emmer, who nobody really talks about, but Emmer's the whip. So this is also going to be a test for Emmer. Can he get enough votes? And then also it's going to be, as you like to say, Elise Stefanik didn't burn all of her bridges in the Ivy League just to get number 3. Now keep an eye on her. Okay. Here's one of the big problems with the whole impeachment thing is the calendar involved here. This is going to run into the election season. Where do you think it goes? Because here's one of the other interesting thing with Kevin McCarthy throwing it to the committees. They've already been doing this for 9 months. Yes. So it's not like they're going to have new ground to till. It's just Jim Jordan, these guys, and Jordan's on both committees, which is even weirder. But they're going to kind of just rehash what they've already done. And what do you practically see? Impeachment's going to get the headlines, but there is a process here over the next 6, 7, 8 weeks while they're doing this funding fight. Are they actually going to do anything new, or are they just going to repackage what they got, do you think? I mean, the question is whether they actually subpoena people. I mean, this is the thing that Matt Gaetz said, is that they haven't even subpoenaed Hunter Biden. In some ways, the process gums up and slow walks the process of impeachment, so McCarthy doesn't actually have to do it. But on the other end, the right-wing and conservative media and the folks in the Freedom Caucus are going to be watching. Are they actually going to subpoena the president? Are they going to subpoena Hunter Biden? Are they going to subpoena any of the people that they want? And in the same token, you mentioned this is basically, they've been doing this for the past 9 months. What new revelations are there going to be? Because if you remember the 2019 impeachment inquiry that for Trump's first one didn't really reveal anything new. It just brought forward witnesses who confirmed what people already knew. The same thing, but I feel like if at this point a lot of the American public, and let's be real, impeachment is always a political act, always has been, always will be. They have to have compelling testimony that will convince the public, because otherwise the public is not going to be convinced, and it could actually backfire on House Republicans. And it could cost them the majority come 2024. So they have to have compelling testimony. Which one's more politically dangerous? What do the Congress people think is more politically dangerous? Because they're smart. They know what's going on. Is it the budget fight or the impeachment fight? That there's 18 Republicans that were in Biden districts. There's really about 30 to 35 of them that are in real swing seats that are going to be really competitive. And that's what will flip the House if it flips. So those 30 to 35 Republicans, what are they more afraid of? Is it either or both or which one?
They're afraid of both, but I would say that they're more afraid of doing of actually having to do an impeachment vote. As you said, because they're in districts that voted for Joe Biden. Some of them are even more, are I guess what you would call toss-up districts. It's important to remember that these Republicans on the front lines, they're by and large McCarthy loyalists. Almost all of them voted for Kevin McCarthy this last, all 15 rounds. They want, I think more than a fight on the budget, they're afraid of a government shutdown. They're not afraid about voting for the budget, but they're afraid of a government shutdown because that doesn't look good for them. Also the other thing to take into account is that if there's a government shutdown, literally in a few weeks, there's going to be the off-year elections in Virginia. There's a lot of federal employees in Virginia that could very well flip the Virginia State House, and they could shoulder the blame because of all the federal employees who won't be getting a paycheck.
Yeah, that's a great point. Eric Garcia joining us. Okay, some news from yesterday as we record this. Mitt Romney stepping down. He's going to finish out his term, but he's going to be done in the Senate. You know, the MAGA folks are really happy and dancing about it. All the moderates are like, that's interesting. I found the statement he made pretty incredible. He's like, look, I'll be in my mid-80s next term. He didn't say I'm fabulously rich and I don't need this, but it was between the lines. When he said, I've been doing this for 25 years. I got some other things I want to do. How did it hit folks? Probably not a surprise. A lot of folks thought this might be a one and done for him, but how did it hit the colleagues? Because we'll hear the hagiography. People are going to praise Mitt Romney, and then people don't like him, going to tear him down. What's kind of his legacy? He's kind of the last Republican non-Trump that could actually survive Trump and do what he wanted to do because Utah is not super Trumpy. What's the legacy that people are talking about on the Hill now that he's actually pulled the trigger here?
I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of Democrats probably are privately worried because it's one less person they can do business with. I'll give you a perfect example. Literally the day before Romney's announcement, I was on the train with Senator Lisa Murkowski, and I just asked her point blank, "Is this impeachment inquiry stuff going to get in the way of the appropriations process?" She's like, "Yes." She's like, literally everybody yesterday was asking me about appropriations. Now everybody's asking me about impeachment. Reading between the lines, this is her saying that this is ridiculous. In the same way, I think a lot of Democrats are frustrated because for all of their disagreements with Mitt Romney, and he's a conservative, make no mistake, he was still somebody they could do business with. He worked together with them on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, worked with them on guns, worked with them on the Respect for Marriage Act. Obviously, one person who's really probably crying is Senator Kyrsten Sinema, his really good friend and fellow BYU alum. They're two people. Romney back earlier this year told me he wouldn't campaign against Sinema if she were to run for re-election. So there very much is probably a feeling among Democrats. They're probably going to miss him more than some Republicans. But I think it's probably not going to go off too well with Senate Minority Leader McConnell because this means that he's going to have probably some other right-wing zealot who's going to oppose him as leader. Or if McConnell steps aside, this is probably not going to make someone like Senator John Thune or John Cornyn or Barrasso or whoever takes McConnell's spot if he decides to step away. This is probably not going to make them happy because it's one more person who's going to raise hell and join your Josh Hawleys and your Mike Lees and your J.D. Vances.
Yeah. Eric Garcia. All right, hypothetical time. We love to project out ahead of time. We may be looking at a situation where we currently have a Republican House and Democratic Senate. We may be looking at a situation in 2024 as you look at the map. It may be the opposite. We may have a Republican Senate and a Democratic House with a very thin majority, or maybe more if they do get really off the rails with this stuff. How's that going to change things? Because we talk about deadlock, but who has the Senate really does steer a lot of what the House does by design. That's how it's designed in the Constitution. How would flipping that look? Let's assume Mitch McConnell hangs in there for a while, and we hope his health, whatever else, we hope his health is okay because these things are scary. I hate seeing that stuff.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
But let's just assume McConnell's still at the helm. That's why he's holding on, because he thinks he's getting the Senate back, and the House goes Democrat. How's that going to change it regardless of who the next president is, whether it's Biden or Trump or whoever.
Well, the thing is saying is that, like, as any member of the House knows, that the Senate does, even though the House supposedly has the power of the purse in the Constitution, basically the Senate writes all the spending bills and then forces the House to eat it. So very much so, it'll very much change things. It'll change how spending's done. It'll change how appropriations are done. Not to mention that it'll change how nominations are done. So if President Biden wins re-election, it's probably going to gum up all of his judicial nominees, because that's the best thing. That's what McConnell is best at doing, is gumming up and obstructing nominations. Or if there's a President Trump, or as much as that may scare Mitch McConnell, or President Ron DeSantis, which is looking increasingly unlikely, it's going to become a judicial confirmation factory. And in the same respect, it's probably going to make you'll probably get more continuing resolutions through. There's probably not going to be a fear of a government shutdown, but it's going to probably slow the process if there's a Democratic president. And it's going to mean that even if there's a Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, he's going to have to swallow whatever Leader McConnell wants him to swallow.
Yeah, not a great metaphor that I want to think about, but you're accurate as it is. Eric Garcia joined. Okay, for the audience, because you're the inside guy, like you run into Lisa Murkowski on the train and get to just chat with her. You get to talk to Joe Manchin about whether he's going to go to WVU and do the right thing for everybody and get out of the way. I'll ask you about that some other time. But give the audience, the folks listening, our friends listening, give them one or two things to pick out of the headlines, because it's going to be a lot of noise and action without a whole lot of underlying meaning for a while, I think, especially with these budget resolutions. They're going to get pulled. They're going to come back. There's going to be conferences. The impeachment thing's going to take a while. Give folks the one or two things they should look for in the headlines, some hard stuff on the debt and spending stuff, and something hard on the impeachment. Go, okay, now I need to pay attention to what's going on here.
You have to take a look at when there's going to be a continuing resolution. You're going to have to take a look at how many Republicans vote against the continuing resolution, because that is going to be, if there are enough Republicans who vote against the continuing resolution, that could provide an impetus for a motion to vacate the chair. The other thing to take into account is how long does it's just plain and simple, if there's a government shutdown, how long are Republicans willing to take it? Because remember, the debt limit agreement that they passed in June basically raises the debt limit to January 1st, 2025. So they can hold out as long as they want. So the question is, how much into the bone are the Freedom Caucus folks willing to cut? And how much are they willing to then the question comes, how many of those frontline Republicans decide to join Kevin and say, look, Mr. Speaker, you need to pass a continuing resolution and have Democrats bail you out? Those are the two questions: are who are the Republicans who are going to tell Kevin to come to his senses? And then also, how many Republicans are going to vote for it? And because that could get some people to say, hey, let's do a motion to vacate.
Give me one or two on impeachment. Is it the Jim Jordan committee stuff? Is it that if they just rehash the same old thing, it'll kind of be like the first Trump impeachment? It'll fall flat from what's promised because it's not new information. It's just repackaged and the public kind of tunes it out. Give me one or two for impeachment too.
The real question is whether Republicans actually subpoena Hunter Biden. That is going to be that's going to ultimately
but not to interrupt you, he's already got the get out of jail free card, because he can sit there and go, I can't answer any questions because I'm under investigation over here, and then he doesn't say nothing. Plus could be a court fight whether he'd have to appear or not. Technically in the state system already.
The other thing is just to see what do Democrats do, because a lot of them are really happy to throw Hunter Biden to not be they don't want to be defense counsel for Hunter Biden. But the question is what the messaging is, because this is going to be mainly done through oversight. The two people to watch are going to be the tag team is going to be Jamie Raskin and AOC, because they're the number one and the number two on the oversight committee. Raskin said he's not running for Senate in Maryland, so this is what he's got. And so the question is, Raskin and AOC have long been the Democrats' best questioners on oversight when it comes to holding Trump accountable. The question is, how do they mount a defense against Comer against Comer and the Republicans in this committee,
which they don't really want to do, by the way.
They don't want to do.
They're going to have to figure out some way to do. All right, Eric Garcia, $1 million question: if there's a motion to vacate the chair, by default, you got to get yourself a new speaker. Who's going to take it?
The question is who wants it, and the question is who has the votes to do it. I mean, the question is who is if you're thinking that they're going to do a motion to vacate now, if you're Emmer or if you're Scalise or if you're Stefanik or if you're, I don't know, Jim Jordan, not Jim Banks because he's running for Senate, you have to start doing your whip count now. You have to start saying who's going to get behind me now. So more than the question about who's going to replace him is, does anybody have the votes? Because really the Kevin had basically the Theresa May benefit, which is that nobody else could muster the most for our friends who don't follow British politics. Theresa May basically stayed in as long as she could because nobody else could take the place. The same way, nobody else can get as many votes as McCarthy. So you have to start whipping votes now, and you have to do it low key.
Yeah, and that example, you wind up with, getting a replacement that lasts less than a head of lettuce, which doesn't go really well. So
yes, precisely.
All right, Eric Garcia, we love talking to you about these things. Busy week in Congress. We'll have you back in a week or two to catch up with. Let everybody know what you got going on. I know you're writing a second book, but go ahead and plug the first one. And let us know where we can keep up with you until we see you again, my friend.
You can follow me on Twitter at Eric M. Garcia. You can buy the book, We're Not Broke, and Changing the Autism Conversation. And you can always just follow us. You can also sign up to the Inside Washington newsletter for The Independent, where we send out an evening newsletter every night, every weeknight.
Yep, I've signed up for that. We need to update our autism episode. It's one of the highest rated ones we ever did about 18 months ago since we've done that now. We need to update it and do it again, my friend, because I got a lot of stuff on that I want to talk. A lot of headlines lately, the last 6-7 months we want to talk about. So we'll definitely do that one as a long form. Eric Garcia, appreciate you, my friend. Talk soon.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details. When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. Let's end on a good note if you like to relax. Let's go over to Montenegro. Brizna, Montenegro. This is from CNN. 7 competitors lying down on mats are vying for the coveted title of laziest citizen, after smashing the previous record in a satirical contest held annually in a holiday resort in northern Montenegro. A lying down record of 117 hours was set last year's contest in the resort village of Bresna. Of course, it's a resort village. They never do this in like industrial areas, but I digress. But as this year's competition enters a 20th day on Thursday, the remaining contestants say they were determined to keep going. Quote, "All of us feel good. Excellent. There are no health problems. They are pampering us. All we have to do is lay here." Well, yeah, that's kind of in the title, lady. Said 2021 champion Dubravik Oskic, who's 38. The contest was launched in the tiny Adriatic country 12 years ago to mock a popular myth that labels Montenegrins as lazy, said Radovan Blagovic, the organizer and owner of the resort. She said the 7 remaining contestants from the starting field of 21 had been laying down for 463 hours so far. There are photos of this. Folks, the most notable thing are the sleeping bags and the multiple charging cords for all the laptops and cell phones. It's a little different nowadays being lazy, you see. Back to the piece. The rules stipulate that standing or sitting are considered a violation of the grounds for immediate disqualification, but contestants are allowed to have a 10-minute every 8 hours or so to go to the toilet. Well, that's good to know. Competitors can also read and use cell phones and laptops. Filip Kresniak, 23, a first-time contestant from the northern town of Moldjavik. Folks, I don't do Slavic real well, so if I'm mispronouncing any of these, I apologize. Said he was confident of victory and picking up the 1,000 euro prize. That's about $1,000.70 US. We have everything we need here. Company is fantastic. Time goes by quickly. Hey, don't be judgy. They've been doing this for 20 days, going on 21 days now, which means even if you just surmise they didn't do a whole lot the other days out of the month, they still did more work last few weeks than Congress did for a lot less pay. That'll do us for Heard Tell. Make sure you're subscribing on however you're getting this program, whether you're watching on the YouTube channel, if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of the various podcast amalgamators like Podcast Addict and things like that. We see those stats. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're following. Leave us a comment if you would. That would be great if they give you that option. Also, leave us a rating. That lets those platforms know our program is worth checking out and helps us promote it. You would do so also. Put us on your social media. We don't pay for promotion here. We just do it off our own social media. So if you can share Heard Tell, let folks know it's worth checking out. We'd really appreciate that. All the notes, everything you need, links. You can even listen and watch the program right in the Heard Tell Substack, heardtell.substack.com, completely free to subscribe to that. Give us a note. We run segments and stories that we get from you, the folks. So make sure you send those in to us, heardtellshow@gmail.com, heardtellshow on the Twitter, and of course on the Substack. You can interact with us there. So wherever you are, across the street or around the world, we hope you're well. We hope you are well fed. We hope you're standing up and not just lying down all day. And we'll talk to you again real soon for more Heard Tell.
All the music on Heard Tell is provided under a Creative Content license from monstercat.com.
Somos la máquina.
Religion is at the intersection of our 21st century life, even if we don't express a faith. At a time when it seems that religion isn't as prevalent as it once was, it still leaves its mark everywhere. As a pastor, I know that religion isn't something I just do on a Sunday, but it's found in every nook and cranny of my life. Sexuality, politics, social media, the economy, war, nationalism, all have some kind of religious angle to them. And as a communicator, I want to find the stories that can help people understand this part of our society that is so important to so many. Hi, I'm Dennis Sanders, and I'm the host of Church and Main. Church and Main is a podcast about the journey of faith and where it intersects with modern life. I look at faith with a journalist's eye, asking the who, where, what, why, and how religion affects some of the major issues of the day. Join me as we journey together. You can listen to Church and Main podcasts at the website churchandmain.org or on your favorite podcast app. I look forward to seeing you.
Folks, you've heard of Ethan Brown on the Heard Tell Show a couple of different times, but if you're interested in learning about how to discuss things like climate change without all the politics and doom and gloom, head over to his podcast, The Sweaty Penguin. Sweaty Penguin is a late-night comedy-style climate podcast working to add nuance, critical thinking, humor, and hope to the climate conversation. They got over 100 episodes already, breaking down weekly news stories and specific topics, from the vanilla to the ADHD to the international accountability to orangutans. Yes, I know, it's a comedy thing, so just go with it. But each time, exploring different ways we can make progress on these issues while still helping the economy, health, security, and everything else we care about. Feel overwhelmed, exhausted, or excluded by today's climate change discourse? This is the podcast for you. Find The Sweaty Penguin wherever you get your podcasts or at www.thesweatypenguin.com.